right, we are live, and I'm amazed always at how fast that fantasy season goes by. Here we are, week 16 coming up, and this season, like every season, it just felt like it's so very fast and so very slow. Grinding waivers definitely a bigger challenge than ever, and often with less to show for it than usual. When the running backs all stay healthy, the star wide receivers all go down. There's just no good answers to be found. But now we're here. And now that we've spent months trying to get to this point where every game feels like life or death, there is no agony like the agony of a Cooper Cup bagel that just hangs around like for 3 days like a giant turd in the punch bowl. So until that Sunday slate comes along, hopefully to erase it from our memories, which it did, or cement it therein, is killing your team at the first possible moment of the fantasy playoffs, which it might have done for some. Here we are. We're finally into the championship sprint. Half the hay is in the barn. We just have two more chances to make big moves or hold those top spots. So let's get to it, guys. How was the week for you?
It was pretty good in the fact that I think I got, a main event team alive, primetime alive, some best ball teams made it in, and we're going to see what happens here. But you definitely are going to have to put up, those 200 plus weeks like we saw this week, this upcoming week or the following week, and be around that 200 range rest of the way.
No doubt. Chris, Nelson?
Listen, I look at it as after a tough season, regular season, I've got a dog in the race that put up a big score in the online championship. So at least I have, something to root for. I had one team put up a decent score in the prime time, so I don't think it's necessarily over.
What was the number, Nelson? What number?
170?
Yep, and that's yep.
And I was going to say, Chris, historically, I say like as long as you don't put up below 165, 170,
that's the range.
You're still within striking distance because that team could always go and put up like a 215, and some of the top teams regress a little bit, come back to the pack. So that's always possible.
Yeah, exactly. Nelson took the words out of my mouth. I think when you start the fantasy playoffs, that 165, 170, you don't want to come anything underneath it. For me, all these years, if I drop anything less than a 165 or see somebody 165 or less, party's over, you can mail it in. But 165, 170 and above, it gets you to the second week, and it gives you some hope. And, two of my teams in the primetime overall dropped a 168 and a 170. Exactly. So at least I feel like, all right, I'm moving on to the second week. Both teams very frustrated, though. I feel like I left a lot of points on the board. Kyler Murray was the quarterback of one of those teams. Tyrone Tracy, a running back, and Saquon Barkley on both of them. So right there, those three, you get an extra 5-10 points out of each of them, and you're right around 200, and it's a different story. But I think if you're looking at the overall standings in the 3-week sprint, don't get wrapped up in where you are on the board in terms of like, I'm 87th overall. That's I got no shot. It's more of, you look and you're in like that 50 to 80 overall range, and you're only 20 points out of being a top 15 overall team. So don't get confused with the overall. Just look at the numbers on the board.
Well, Chris, wasn't the winner last year, I think in the prime time, like 42nd heading into the final week?
Jeff Kozlowski.
Kozlowski was way back, and he dropped an epic week 17 number, which we all dream about. I think it was like a 240 or something like that to pass, so many people on the board. But Matt, in order to do that, it's funny. I was just happened to be looking at like the top, 50 this morning. Like everyone has Lamar, Goff, or Allen, right? So if you're in that range of like, outside of the top 30, you have to overcome now. If you're a Lamar owner or an Allen owner and you're behind all these teams, it's a wash now. You have to overcome your other players on your roster, have to overcome 20 Lamar teams above you, 20 Allen teams above you, 15 Burrow or Jared Goff teams. So you don't want to fall too far behind where your roster can't overcome the quarterback. And that's what I see right now. But yeah,
Yep. And
point of everything
that's a good segue into my first observation. I think if you don't have Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson, you might be climbing out of a 20 to 30 point hole each week. And it's going to be tough to do. I think if you got Baker Mayfield, maybe Sam Darnold, even though he kind of crapped the bed this week, but those guys might be the next best pivots. Otherwise, if you got a platoon, you better hope each one of them has a juicy matchup over the next 2 weeks to cover you. And to your point,
the other
Chris,
one is Goff. Goff put up a crooked number.
Yeah, he did, but will he
56.
continue to do that? That's the question.
I'm just, will he? I mean, he's shown that earlier in the year. I think he put up another big number, like 40 plus. So, I mean, it's possible. We're talking Lamar, but Goff outscored him in NFFC scoring. So,
I think 100%. I think the problem now lies with Goff, and if you have Goff, you're throwing him right back out there. He's the less of the big four owned, right? But besides Lamar, Allen, and Burrow, he's the lesser of the four owned. But now he goes into Chicago, and is this matchup going to hold up for him to hang another crooked number if the weather isn't no good? You take in a guy that in the past doesn't usually play well outside, whereas you are at a point now where I think you expect Allen, Lamar, and Burrow to be 35, 40 plus every week. At least Allen. I don't know how you overcome Allen these next couple of weeks. He's just that guy that is the guy to beat. We see it every year. There's one or two guys that is on every championship roster. Josh Allen's going to be it.
Yeah, and that's kind of the issue I see with Goff is that just he's got at Chicago and at San Francisco. And with a guy with his reputation and history for not playing well outside, he's still your best shot probably if that's your quarterback. You're not going to sit him or anything like that. But I think Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson teams probably have the inside track at quarterback.
Yeah, no, I mean, but like I said, you definitely want those guys. But now Lamar is facing the Steelers, who usually it's a tough matchup. For some reason, Pittsburgh always matches up well against them. And it's a huge game. So we'll see. I mean, I'm not taking anything away from Lamar, but I'm just saying. And now with Josh Allen versus the Patriots, that's a dream matchup. But what if it's, what's his name? Cook gets a couple of touchdowns. Somebody else runs one.
There is definitely a path. There's definitely a path for Allen to drop a 22 and get out of there. And if you're fading Josh Allen in this overall tournament, you're praying for a couple things. You're praying for you wake up Sunday morning, there's bad weather, there's wind, and before you know it, it's 14-0 in the second quarter, and it's a Ty Johnson rushing touchdown and a James Cook rushing touchdown, and Allen takes his foot off the pedal. They cruise to a low-scoring 27-7 win or something like that. You get an Allen 20 bomb, and maybe you catch up in the field. That's it. There are paths to these guys all coming back to earth. Goff, Lamar, Allen. The guy that I'd be petrified about after catching a huge break is Burrow going at home this week versus the Browns defense. Burrow can hang that 40-plus number with Chase. So those two are back in play big time. If you watch that game, you got, game scripted out. If you're a Burrow or Chase owner, pretty good in that game with defensive touchdowns and stuff like that. So that game could have it set up well early on for Burrow and Chase to go off again, but it just didn't work out. Burrow gave a 27 and everybody took a sigh of relief that didn't have him in the overall.
Well, what's interesting about the Bengals here is if Thursday night the Chargers beat the Broncos, and we're expecting the Bengals to win, it just sets them up where if the Bengals can win out, which looks very plausible, and the Broncos lose out, which, it's the Chargers this week, the Bengals next week sets up that matchup, and then the final week, it could be, Kansas City fighting for the home field advantage. at Denver. So Denver could lose the remainder. So, I mean, it just creates the Burrow buzz even more, the Burrow chase thing. So it'll be interesting.
And Matt, one more point on that. It doesn't even matter since he gets eliminated because, Chase is going for the Triple Crown. So he's going to get fed down the stretch here. That's just something I highly doubt they say, all right, you know what? I need my money, my contract. I'm sitting out these last game or two or whatever. He's going for that Triple Crown. I'm sure he wants it, him and Burrow. So big numbers are coming.
Yep. No doubt. All right, guys, let's take a quick second and we'll get our ad break out of the way and we'll be right back.
Hey, I know DFS may have peaked, but there are still hundreds of thousands of people to play and millions of dollars up for grabs every week. So let's put our hoodie on and let's talk about Player Profiler's DFS Dominator. It has a cash game optimizer that leverages the projections from Billy and Theo and Bradley and Evan and that Player Profiler AI engine to create cash game lineups that certainly have a high floor, but also give you that ceiling. Now, you've probably heard about the most powerful tool of all, our Lineup Genius. We know winning GPPs requires a completely different approach, which is why our Lineup Genius takes you through the process of selecting the quarterbacks in the juiciest matchups. Then it highlights the stacks and runbacks that are available, lets you pick the chalk level, lets you pick the level of correlation with a number of other proprietary settings available to you. Click a button and it generates hundreds of lineups to be imported into FanDuel and DraftKings. And it's just $45 a year, not a week, a year. So for that reason alone, if you play DFS, you'd be an idiot not to buy the DFS Dominator.
All right. Speaking of promos, Player Profiler also has a promo code Santa. Just put that in, and you can get the Player Profiler all-in package for just $25 for the rest of the year. Just a nice way to demo it and see if it's something you might like to subscribe to next year. So give it a shot. All right, guys, I got my second observation is probably more of a question than anything, but let's say you're down in the standings in one of these championship sprints, a fair ways or whatever. How are you handling it? You don't necessarily want to give up just because you're a ways down, because for example, the prime time, it pays down 25 spots. And if you look at, the team who's number one, they have 386 points, but the team in 25 has 337. So, you're looking at almost a 50-point drop there. So while you might not be able to win the overall title, it's still possible to finish in the money. Are there any things that you're doing differently with those teams that are a ways down there to try to at least get in the money, or are you just handling it pretty much like scratch?
Well, I will say that I'm definitely, if I'm in the top 25 and I'm only 50 points back, I look at it as I'm in good shape. Not as good of shape if I'm the guy in first place, right. But what I'm saying.
Let me refocus real quick, Nelson. Like, say you're in 150th place or something like that, and you're trying to just say, hey, maybe I can get up to 25. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. To me, it's more of, I look at it as there's a lot of, I don't look at the placement necessarily, because it can be overwhelming. You're kind of like, you're looking at the top of the mountain rather than just looking at what's in front of you and just, keep hiking, just keep, plugging along. So I look at it more of, okay, what type of score did my team put up? Is it within striking distance? And to me, striking distance is anything, even 70 points out, because I can tell you countless times, been doing this for many years, been chasing overall titles for many years. And I've seen teams put up a monster week 15 score, 230, 240, be ahead of the pack. And then they go and put up like a 140 the following week. And that team is not heard from the rest of the shootout. And then it's like, it's a new set of teams that kind of get into the mix. And the teams that were like in 10th, 20th, 30th, they have like the right mixture of players that propel them up. So I what I'm saying is, like, I wouldn't be losing hope on the overall title. I know what you're saying, Dan, is absolutely. I'm not losing hope on trying to cash in finishing in the top 25 or wherever whatever contest it might be. But I'm also not giving up hope on finishing, first overall. And I've had experience where in the FFPC, with David Hubbard and obviously this is going back a few years. Every year is different, but I know the big thing was like, Cooper Kupp puts up a 0 on Thursday night. Those teams are done. Not necessarily, because the year that we won it, we had Will Fuller in our lineup, and he put up a 0 that first week of the shootout. Needless to say, we didn't feel very good about our chances with him putting up a 0. But we always knew that team had like the horses to put up a big score. So, and that's what it did the following 2 weeks. So, and we had to come back from further back. It wasn't like we started off on top after week 1.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So this is always a great topic every year at this point of the season. But I'll say this, Dan, to your point, when you're down in the standings like that, I agree with everything Nelson just said. But in the second week of the playoffs, if you're within that 60, 70 points like that, it could just flip just like that. The teams that are up top right now, most of the teams in the top 15, 20 overall, they had that awesome wide receiver week combination of either Mike Evans, Devontae Adams, Amon-Ra, CeeDee Lamb, the Eagles receivers, those receivers right there. Now, Devontae Adams and Mike Evans teams that are in the top 10, they could come out and drop a 12 and a 9 this week, drop a 150 overall. And your team that dropped the 150 last week comes out with the same lineup of your combination of players and drops a 210. And now everybody's even going into the final week. So you don't want to get too carried away chasing it. I always say to people when I'm talking, it's that third week where you got to get a little creative. Maybe you bench your stud quarterback for the backup because it's widely owned, and start getting a little frisky. But the second week, no, you try and stay as close to normal as possible. With that all being said, I had 3 horses in the race in the prime time. 2 teams that I felt were loaded. My 2 top teams, they were both higher up there. Then I had 1 team that was riddled with some injuries. It was limping into the playoffs. Didn't look good on paper. And it was really far down. Just a team that you don't have any hope that can win the overall, right? And it's a Jalen Hurts quarterback team with Geno Smith as the backup. Well, I knew that Jalen Hurts was highly owned. And I thought he would struggle this past week versus Pittsburgh. I thought he had a max of like 20, 25 points in him. But for whatever reason, I thought Geno Smith could drop a big, big number in that game versus the Packers. Jair Alexander was out, on and on and on. I made that switch, Dan. I'm sad I'm disgusted now, but I put Geno in over Jalen Hurts in the primetime overall, okay? Thinking, all right, let me see if I can make up 15, 20 points plus here on the whole field with a quarterback that's probably 2% owned or less. And obviously I got burned, Hurts got 36 points, Geno got 6 and was god-awful and got hurt. And it backfired. But that's the type of move, Dan, that I made. I don't know if that helps your question, but that's something I would do going forward.
Okay, yeah, that's definitely makes sense, and that's kind of where I'm at. Is if you got to look at each team and say what does this team need to do to be competitive, and I guess I guess my point is you don't get too crazy, but you don't want to settle for the friendliest possible way to not cash, if I've got Caleb Williams and Stroud, I'm probably playing Caleb as, just being I know Caleb can get me less than Stroud, but he can also get me more than Stroud.
Well, you're not playing either of them because you're not in the playoffs, Dan.
But if you, I do actually have a prime time that has both those quarterbacks, and
Oh wow.
yeah, and I went with Caleb this week, and I lost a few points off of what Stroud could have got me, but I'm not mad about it because it was just like, hey, I gotta shoot for the 35-point week, and Caleb can get me there, and Stroud just has shown that he can't. So
Yeah.
all right, I never thought I'd be saying this, but get well soon, Aiden O'Connell and Derek Carr.
Oh man.
We need you more than we ever knew or expected, for sure. It's hard to believe that sometimes these quarterbacks that you would never even think about starting, and I'm not going to start, but how they can affect some of the other players that are definitely bigger names. Alvin Kamara, hopefully he's healthy on his own, but assuming Kamara plays, if Derek Carr is in there, his ceiling I think is much higher. Same thing with Brock Bowers. Bowers, kind of went out with a whimper for those teams that were riding him getting in. And it's just tough now. But anyway, just wanted to say get well soon to those two guys. And question for
No,
you
Dan,
guys.
that's a great point because you're praying if you have Bowers that AOC can start. Who are they playing? Jacksonville this week? I mean, neither team should want to win that game, but it is a game where Bowers could smash if AOC's in there. With Ritter, you basically have no hope. You're DOA.
It's one of the worst turn of events. Yeah, it's one of the worst turn of events for a player highly owned that people are relying on that you could even possibly imagine is, and we talked about it weeks ago, right? When Ritter was almost named starting quarterback, and then O'Connell made a miraculous recovery, came out of like Willis Reed out of the tunnel for the Knicks and to save Brock Bowers, and then he goes down. So Bowers is done. Guys, there's no hope for Bowers if Ritter is the quarterback. He's that bad, and it just sucks if you're a Bowers owner. For these last 2 weeks, you had the tight end that you needed. Quarterbacks went down. You got stuck with Ritter. He's god-awful, and you're screwed.
I hate hearing that, but you're probably exactly right, Chris.
Yeah,
so let's talk about another quarterback that's probably out, Mahomes. How are we treating the Chiefs if Mahomes is out? What do you guys think?
We don't say Mahomes' name on this show anymore, Dan.
I mean, it's amazing. It seems like this time of year, every year, Mahomes, like at least for the last couple, gets this ankle injury, and I don't know. I don't know. I mean, the Chiefs, how they just keep on winning. I mean, beating the Browns right now isn't anything of But
yeah,
still.
but what do you do with the players, Matt? Like in terms of like Wentz takes over here, like who were you starting anyway on the Chiefs?
I started
my question.
I started Drake May over Mahomes this week, and it looked like a terrible decision. But it was like, but he did pass him in NFFC by like 0.2 or whatever. I mean, I don't know.
I don't think you have anybody on the Chiefs with to play.
I mean, who were you really
Kelsey,
starting
if you
on KC?
No, I mean, if you're a Kelsey owner, you're throwing him out there still at the tight end position. But other than that, I don't think there's a Kansas City Chief player that you play unless I'm missing. I don't think you could start Kareem Hunt. I don't know what you're doing with Pacheco. It's like not only a two-way split, but now Pirine gets some love too. The receivers, Worthy had a decent game. Matt, ding ding. Your boy Worthy had a good game, but with Wentz in there, you're not playing him. Nelson, you got anything on the Chiefs besides the defense?
I mean, listen, we've seen enough of Mahomes this year that I don't think this is like, I'm not trying to make this a hot take, but I really don't think that there's much of a drop off from Mahomes to Wentz. And I know it sounds dumb. I'm honestly being honest. I'm being sincere.
Yeah.
That I look at it as like, if you're starting Kelsey, I think Wentz is just fine for Kelsey. If if you're still hoping that like Hopkins is like was gonna be the key to your season, like you shouldn't have like those high hopes. Worthy, I don't know. I look at it as like, it's status quo. Nothing really changes with Mahomes out, because in terms of fantasy, it wasn't like Mahomes was like carrying all these guys that were like fantasy startable.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about that. I'm just saying, if you're setting your playoff lineup and you don't have better options, I don't know how you put in a Worthy in there, DeAndre Hopkins. Wentz, they're going to run the shit out of this ball. They're going to try and make the 17-14, win this game versus Houston at home, probably be freezing as shit out there in Kansas City Saturday afternoon. Wentz is what's his upside to throw for? 175, 200? I don't know who you play in the pass game, the run game. It's the Chiefs defense, which, by the way, was the star of one of the stars of people's teams, 25 fantasy points this past week. Huge boost for teams that rostered them and had them in the lineup. But for the Chiefs offensive players, I'm going elsewhere this week.
I mean, I agree, but I mean, the one guy that you're basically banking on, if anything, is like, if your RB2 situation is screwed up, or is Pacheco, and you're praying he gets a couple of touchdowns. I mean, you're hoping maybe this is like whatever, week 3, coming off the injury and all that, and they're going to run the ball. So if they can get the ball inside that 5, I mean, I'm confidently no. But
the issue is it doesn't look like they have any interest on giving him more touches. I think, Hunt's not going away, and I don't think Piron's going away on passing downs. So it just turns into a shit show backfield, and you don't want to. It makes them all irrelevant. I don't think you can start any of them with confidence.
No, you can't. I'm not saying, but he's the one guy that could get a couple of touchdowns. I'm not saying he's going to, and I'm obviously not confident, but just looking up the setup with Mahomes probably not playing and all that.
Okay.
All right. So I think.
By the way, Dan, while we're on that topic of the defenses, that was a big story in the first week of the fantasy playoffs here. We had the Chiefs. Shout out to Nelson last week talking about the Cincinnati Bengals shit defense, how to bring them into the playoffs and roster them. They gave 19 or 20 fantasy points as well. The Broncos gave 20, and the Cowboys gave 18 or 19. That's 4 or 5 defenses this past week that were pretty well rostered and owned that gave 18 points and up for fantasy defenses, while most other defenses were like 7 or below. So huge advantage for the teams that had those defenses. And I noticed that the teams up top had one of those 4 defenses rostered compared to all these other shit defenses that didn't give much this past week. Sorry,
I know.
Back to you.
I know other shows don't talk about it, but we'll talk defenses. We'll talk kickers because they do matter. If you're playing in leagues that have them, you'd best have a strategy to get out there and find a good one, especially at this time of year.
I'm telling you, ride the Bengals.
There you go. That's one I'm definitely riding. The Cowboys, I think, are another one that's I don't know about this week, but then they get Carolina, or not Carolina. Who did they get in week 17?
Dallas gets Philly, which is an abort mission.
Yeah, never mind.
No,
I'm a week behind. I'm thinking in the past.
No, that Cincy defense is a good call, though. You get Cleveland again this week. Jameis Winston was a complete disaster. And while we're talking about Cleveland there, everybody better start praying for all their Jerry Jeudy shares that this organization doesn't decide to go give Green Doriel Beckham there, whatever his name is.
DTR, whatever.
DTR.
Yeah, Chris, that's an excellent point because, like, on my team that has a shot, it's like I am praying. Like, let's just have some fun. Throw Jameis out there. I need Jeudy, and he unlocked the key there. So,
What do you do now? What do you do if they make the move as a Jeudy owner? Because I am as well, Matt. What do you do if they make the move and bench Winston?
I'm pretty screwed. I really, I got Cedric Tillman on that team.
All right.
Coker.
Well, if you have a decent option,
If you
let's
have a
just say,
decent
what are you
option,
doing?
I mean, it's just I don't know. I don't know if I could sit Judy because I'm expecting a shootout in this game. I mean, so maybe at some point Jameis comes in the second. He gets the what's his name? DTR is just so terrible. They bench him again and go back to Jameis. I don't know.
DTR is on the level of Desmond Ritter,
Right.
in terms of throwing.
Yep.
Yeah,
He's not bad.
I would have a hard time starting Judy, honestly.
I mean, the way I look at it is if you're going to start, what's his name, for all those games, I know it was money related, and you lost all those games, just stick with Jameis at this point. Who's ever playing the teammates?
I got a bad feeling they're going to DTR starting this week.
Yeah, I hope
Let's
not,
crush
but
that juju. Let's crush it.
I
Crush
mean,
it down.
the floor is the same, but the ceiling, at least with Winston, is there. So it's tough.
All
right. So I think if you came into these championship sprints with Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, T. Higgins, guys like that, they're a little bit lower owned. They had a great first week. I think there's a possibility these guys could continue to ball out the rest of the way in the these last 2 weeks. And if they do that, I think they could win somebody a lot of money for sure. But I think if there's a stack that wins it all, and shout out to our producer Kirk, who keeps begging us to actually talk about the people that we put on the thumbnail that we used to advertise the show. But
I didn't know that was a thing.
But if there's a stack that wins it all, my money's on Baker Mayfield and Big Mike. They've got Dallas and Carolina the next 2 weeks, which are both just juicy defenses. So I think if somehow you have a team with that stack, things look promising for you. Any other players you guys?
Yes. Since you're talking Tampa Bay, I'm hoping it's Bucky. I'm hopefully, he's healthy now. You saw that run. You see what he can do, and hopefully with these next couple of matchups, he's a guy that I'm going to need. So I'm hoping,
But stacks,
Bucky all the way.
But stacks. What stacks do you see for the next 2 weeks that could win?
Oh, for me?
No, for anybody. What stacks do you see? Like a Baker Evans stack.
Yeah, there's a Baker Evans. The one guy we didn't talk about at quarterback, and I think that stack could win people a lot of money, is Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin.
Yeah,
look at Jaden Daniels' last 3 games in the NFFC. 37-15, 35-7, 29-9. I know it's the Eagles. The Eagles have a good, secondary and stuff, but it's at Washington. Hopefully this is a shootout game, and, hopefully he can continue with the 30-plus points. I'm definitely rooting for it because on my best prime time, he's my quarterback. So just the guy that, has that upside. He seems healthy now. And him and Terry, seem like a really good combo.
That's a good one. Nelson, what do you got?
Hurts, A.J. Brown / Devontae stack.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's solid, especially for, they have Washington this week. They have Dallas in the final week. So, yeah, I can see the two of them. We talked about that last week. If you guys
remember, the week we were questioning was against Pittsburgh this past week.
Yep.
That we felt like the upside was limited. And, considering the matchup, they went off. 36 and 25, and Devontae got it done also. So
big time.
Well, the big thing there is no Goddard. That always helps.
That always does help.
Slim Reaper.
Yep.
That's always like his best bonus.
So I think the people that are in a that had the huge week 1 are in a really good position here, because we talked about this actually a couple of weeks ago about Mike Evans, that I said there was no other wide receiver you would want down the stretch than Mike Evans because of that record that they're going for. Mm-hmm. Baker is peppering him. He has the monster week, comes back now. He gets Dallas. But the two guys, they're going for records here. You got Baker going to Evans. Rodgers is trying to, every record he's trying to break with him and Devontae Adams here down the stretch. to be the all-time quarterback and receive whatever the hell they got going here. They're obsessed with each other. Those two guys, they're set up perfectly. Now Rodgers has the Rams secondary to pick on again this week. So those two, and I was hoping, if you would ask me this question last week, I was hoping for Kyler Murray to Trey McBride for 3 weeks to be a big combo. I love the fact that McBride hasn't scored a touchdown coming into the
two
fantasy
touchdowns
playoffs.
this weekend. Two touchdowns.
Matt, I don't know if you keep jinxing it by saying it every week or what, but he's never scoring again. He's
scoring
never
till this
scoring.
weekend, buddy.
We gotta put him on notice, like we did with JSN and like we did with Worthy. I mean, those guys have eventually come through for us. So,
the problem,
McBride, you're on the shit list for this show. All right, just so
yes,
you know that.
are.
So
Can I give you an honorable mention?
You are.
Stack?
Great as you could. Yeah, go ahead, Nelson.
Tim Boyle and Malik Neighbors.
Yes, there you go. That's everybody's number one stat. That's funny. But the Kyler, what the problem is with the Kyler to McBride combo is that, Kyler's god effing awful. That's the real problem here. He's terrible. And even with that said, they trying to get McBride in the end zone. They did a little inside pass to McBride like Mahomes does to Kelsey, and McBride got stood up on the 1-inch line, and it was sickening. So they can't even force feed him into the end zone there. But that was they have Carolina this week. They have the Rams in championship week. If Kyler can't make beautiful music with McBride these next 2 weeks, it's hopeless.
I think you got to start Kyler unless you have a legit option. I think you got to start him at this point, but
and eat shit.
He's like Mahomes. I don't see the upside. Like he's not running. What did he have?
That's the thing, Nelson. That's the thing. Or something rushing. He just doesn't run anymore. He hasn't ran in almost 2 months. If you're a Kyler owner, this. You're like, where is the 75-yard rushing game? Like it just doesn't happen. I think one time he ran for like 50 or 60 yards in the last month. But, you watch him every game, he's either laying on the ground, wincing. He's got something wrong with him. I don't know. I can't just say, oh, he's playing hurt or whatever. I just think he sucks, honestly. And that's really what it comes down to. But, what do you do? Each week, Nelson, you look at the matchup and you go, I'm going to play him again. And this has been the story of the season with all these quarterbacks. You look at Caleb Williams matchups. You're like, I'm not going away from him this week. The matchup's too good. You go with Kirk Cousins. I'm not going away with it. Going away. This is a great matchup versus the Raiders. Boom, bust.
Well, I mean, Chris, just speaking of Caleb Williams, and I know
yeah.
He's got a great matchup this week. I mean, Detroit's defense is decimated.
Yes, but Matt, the problem is, say it with me, he sucks. That's the problem.
I'm not arguing that point. I'm just saying, the thing with Detroit is they're basically going to have to outscore everybody going forward. That's their path to the Super Bowl if they're going to get there.
One of my observations was to talk about that Lions team as a whole, but I'll save it. We'll get there. We definitely do need to cover the Lions.
All right. Well, we're about ready to get over to Matt. I just want to highlight that producer Kirk is once again promising championships. If you like this video, so this is a promise from producer Kirk. If it doesn't work for you, I'll get you his contact info. But otherwise, man, hey, if you don't like this video and you don't win your championship, you got nobody to blame but yourself. So just throwing that out there. All right, Matt.
My first one was just a T. Higgins rant because, he just cost me. I had 2 Josh Allen teams that got eliminated last Monday night because T. Higgins did nothing.
Oh, that's sickening.
And
that's sickening.
It really kills. I mean, it really kills. And the thing is, I draft this guy every year. And next year, if he goes to the Patriots and he's partnered up with Lisan Al-Gaib, Drake May, Dune fans get that reference. I'm going to be all in again. So I'm just so sick of that guy. But that was just a quick little thing.
Matt's ready to be hurt again.
Yes, pretty much. I mean, for me, I'm going to look at it from like my roster and what I'm looking for this weekend as like observations. Like what has changed, what looks promising. One thing we didn't mention, I have something else to talk about, but one thing we didn't mention was the JSN factor. Like this guy has taken over the mantle and he's become a hell of a player. But now, like, if Sam Howell's the quarterback this week, I mean, the guy just looked like Desmond Ritter out there. So, I mean, it's really going to swing a lot of things.
He was so bad, Sam Howell. It was a good comparison. He was Desmond Ritter bad. I don't know what you do. Not that Geno was lighting it up or looking good himself, but Sam Howell looked absolutely lost, like Zach Wilson.
The Vikings defense could absolutely crush.
Yes,
if Howell starts, because the offensive line for Seattle is so bad, and then you add on top, Howell is always taking sacks like crazy, and the Vikings are very good at sacking the quarterback. So you put all three of those things together, it's like the perfect storm. So. That could be a huge one for next week.
Yeah, and the other major thing we haven't spoken about yet is, Montgomery being done for the year. And Jamar Gibbs, on paper right now, looks like the RB1 going forward, right? Without a Monty there and this defense they have currently, I mean, he should be, there's no like
locked in.
Yeah, there's no. We would add somebody else in there. They got to live and die with Gibbs.
And there's no other running back you want the next 2 weeks of championship weeks than Jahmyr Gibbs, in my opinion. Yep. If you gave me one running back, it's Gibbs, and I don't even think twice. You could keep all the other names. It doesn't matter. Give me Gibbs. For 2 straight weeks, the whole backfield behind that offensive line. Gibbs all day is going to win a lot of people money.
I mean, in just the game script, if the Bears can score points this week, and it's a back and forth, which I mean, if the Bears can't score this week, then you really got to start having conversations. Chris.
Yeah, Matt, to your point, real quick, it dawned on me because I do this every year. We lose a lot of soldiers after week 14, right? You said the Josh Allen teams that you lost, and that's sickening because you get into playoff week, you see Allen drop a 50, and it's painful for the what could have been. Nelson, I think I saw you leading a consolation right now, the Prime or the online championship, or is that, or at least right there?
Second.
Is it second? Okay. What do you guys do with the teams that you lost that go into the consolation round? Do you like secretly root against them not to be bad?
I'll say this, Chris.
You know what I mean? I had a team that I was obsessed with that I loved, that I was like, if I get this team in the championship field, I'm winning the overall. And then when it missed by 8 points last week, I was like, just please suck. Don't come out here and drop a 225 to make me sicker.
225.
I want Max Payne. Because the team that I thought I want Max Payne. I'm telling you, the team that I thought was my best primetime team is in our New York primetime. Okay, it was a live primetime, and I think it's my best team. And I'm like, I just need to get it, like sneak into the shootout, somehow sneak in as a wild card. Okay. And I just missed out. Okay. Just perfect scenario, right? Perfect storm of it doesn't get in, and it's now second in the consolation. And I guarantee you it's going to win the consolation bracket. Yeah. It's going to easily outscore the first place team in the championship.
That's what I'm saying.
Every
year it's the same thing.
But how about that first place team? Shout out to my boy EA, Eric Albright, putting up a 281.70.
Oh my God, I saw that. That is
That's
absolutely
in the online championship.
Yep.
online championship consolation round, 281 points. Imagine you just miss out on the play. Like, I hope that team, for his sake, was like a 10th place team that just missed. And then because if you just miss out on the playoffs, like me and Nelson are talking about with some of our teams, and then drop a big number the first week of the play, it honestly, you lose sleep over that.
No, that's when you jump out a fucking window.
Yeah, exactly. Like, that's why I'm asking. Like, I root against these teams. Like, drop a 120 just so I could be like, you know what? Thank God.
Here's the thing,
wasted
guys.
all this time.
I looked at that team. That team is not a 10th place team. I'll put money on it. I have not looked at the standings. I didn't go that deep. I just quickly looked at his roster. That team is a legit team that just missed out.
The 281. The you're talking.
Yeah, he's got Goff, Connor,
281.
Cook,
It's Goff,
Adams.
St. Brown, Evans, and Adams. Yeah, it had everybody.
Neighbors,
that went
McBride,
Neighbors,
Johnny.
McBride, Janu Smith. You're talking about guys that like were getting it done
Aubrey as
on
his kicker.
all year long.
That's sickening. Yeah.
There's no way this team just missed out.
Yeah, because that's a team. If it's in, not only are you in, but now you're the runaway favorite to take down the title with a 281. You didn't drop a 220 where you're like, all right, great first week. I'm live for the next two. No, that's I'm running away with this thing type of number. Mm-hmm. That hurts.
That does.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, it's just about like I said, who's going to be the guys this week? I'm not saying Lamar or Josh Allen are going to stumble. I mean, Goff outdoors is a concern. I mean, you just have to look at the splits. Not that he can't do it, and not that the Chicago defense can't be beat, but who are these other guys that are going to step up for you? Like, who would have? Like I mentioned, Jaden Daniels. Like, is it Stafford? Look at Aaron Rodgers. I mean, Aaron Rodgers in his last 6 games has thrown 13 touchdowns versus 1 interception. And I'm not sticking up for Rodgers. I think he's as much at fault for the Jets as the Jets themselves. But in those last 7 games, they've had the lead in like 5, in like 6 or 5 of them, and they only won 2 in the last minute. So I don't know who it's going to be. Adams is another guy you want to have right now.
Well, why don't we just go around real quick? Anybody have somebody in mind that they think goes off this particular week, stud-wise, that's going to – maybe it's somebody that went off in week 1 that's going to go off again in week 2 and keep those teams up top, or somebody that, was held in check week 1 that's going to blow up here in the second week? Because I can tell you right now, I bit my tongue. I didn't say anything on this show last week, but as someone that has Amon-Ra in both my championship teams going into last week, I was giddy. I was like, I know Amon-Ra is dropping a big number this week versus the Bills. And the other guy on my team I thought was in a prime position to drop a big number finally was DK Metcalf, and that bombed out. So 1 out of 2. Is there anybody that you guys feel gut call this week that's going to blow up?
I mean, I already said my guy. I think it's Mike Evans who's going to continue to blow up.
I'll take, what about the rookie BTJ?
Yeah,
I think
that's a good one.
Another nice matchup.
Yeah, you know what? That's a good one. He had 33 fantasy points this week. Another guy that helped people get up top in the standings. Nelson, anybody?
I mean, there's so many guys actually that I think could do it. Like, I mean, did we expect much out of Neighbors and Brian Thomas this week with Mac Jones at quarterback? And I know the Jets, we don't really have much respect for the Jets defense these days, but it wasn't ideal. And then with Neighbors, he's banged up and he's got DeVito at quarterback, and it's not like the backup option Boyle was. If we're praying for that Boyle come into the lineup.
Yeah.
So I look at like that was kind of a surprise to me. and I have both those guys actually on one of my teams that's up there. So I think it's just one of those things where those guys are just ballers. Like they just make plays, they get it done, and the schedule I think favors them too.
Neighbors is in a good spot again, and all you got to do is score a touchdown. If they follow the same script, Neighbors said coming into last week, I want the ball early, and they got him the ball early, and it wasn't like all these big plays. Just get him the 6-8 yard catches early. Let them pile up. You want your receiver to have 4 catches for 25 yards in the first quarter, because at some point he's going to hit the big 25, 30 yard catch, and then those numbers are going to look phenomenal to you. It's not like, oh, he finally caught a 27 yard. He's got 1 catch for 27 yards at halftime. No, that 4 for 25 goes up to 5 for 55. And then now you're rolling. Now you're putting something together. That's got to be the game plan with Neighbors. He doesn't have a Joe Burrow as a quarterback, an Allen, a Lamar. He doesn't have that. He's got to dink and dunking to get his stats. He's got to get the 17 targets, put that together for a 10-catch game for 80 yards and a touchdown. And if Nelson, like you said, if you're the Neighbors owner, you need the touchdown each week. Because the touchdown will get you to 20. If not, you're not getting to 20 on Neighbors.
Well, and with Neighbors, he's going. He's 15 receptions behind Puka from last year, so he's got incentive. You want to get those numbers and all that. So I think he's pretty much reinvigorated. Put it that way, at least from that story. From that standpoint, for him to finish above what Puka did last year in receptions, I think would be meaningful for him.
Yeah, I'm going to throw my guy out there, Josh Jacobs. Josh Jacobs is a machine right now. The whole offense is built around him. That first quarter was like a dream scenario if you're an owner of any player. Just every single play is a rush to him, a handoff to him, or a dump off to him. Straight down the field. Before you know it, you got 12, 15 fantasy points on the opening drive. Things slowed down after that. He took basically the whole second half off. But this week, 14-point favorite at home versus shit Saints defense. He could put whatever number he wants up on the board. So Josh Jacobs is my candidate to go 30+.
Chris, how about our old friend from week 1, Jerome Ford?
I was going to bring him up. That was my number one observation, Nelson. I was waiting for one of us to bring it up, but he's going in my lineups. He's been sitting, getting rigor mortis on the end of my bench for the last 2 months, but I got a couple playoff teams with him sitting on the bench there. He's going in my lineup this week.
Okay, and anybody else? I got. Another thing to me that was amazing this weekend was watching Lamar throw 5 touchdowns versus Giants. That's not the amazing part. Is that Zay Flowers got 0 of those. It was like you're hoping for the smash game. Bateman gets 2. It was even the rookie got 1. I mean, that was not what you needed.
No,
Matt. Zay Flowers, I was expecting the big game as well, and it should have happened, especially in that type of game. I don't know what the issue is in terms of why they're not sending him downfield like they send Bateman, but he's got to have a couple bomb plays to him down the field. Everything just seems very like around the line of scrimmage and quick passes to him and 10-yard outs. Where's the bomb to Zay Flowers? He's got the speed. I don't know why they haven't done that a couple times. I'm hoping that at some point in the next 2 weeks we see it. But, yeah, that was frustrating, especially in that type of game. I thought Zay Flowers was going for 25+.
Yeah, that was and the last observation I have is when you look at a team, I know – I was highly on him. I know Nelson. I think pretty much everybody on here was, and most were. Like a guy like Chase Brown, you look at his last 6 weeks, and he's been top 5 RB, I think 4 out of those, and otherwise he's been 8 or 9. And I've been pretty critical of the Bengals head coach for years now. I think he's living off that Super Bowl that they got him to. I don't really think he's good. And just look at this team that's going to fight and only has a small percentage of making the playoffs. If they would have used this kid earlier and what this team could have done and what it could have been for fantasy. So that's, spill some beer on what could have been comment I wanted to throw on Chase Brown.
They just play. Yeah. I mean, now you're going to get me started. I thought I was over this. It was early on in the year.
Do I need to pass this to you?
That might have been all the difference, Matt, why my teams didn't make the playoffs. If they had come to their senses earlier and just used Zach Moss as like a short yardage type of back or whatever and just let Chase cook, then we could have been talking about a different story here. But like Chase Brown was one of those guys that like I don't know. I don't even want to bring it up. I don't even want to talk about it because it brings up bad feelings. But it's sometimes mind-boggling with these NFL coaches on what they're seeing, or obviously there's different dynamics that go into it in the locker room, and I'm sure Zach Moss is a great teammate. I'm not shitting on him as a person or anything, but for fantasy purposes, the dude's not good, and he's never been good his whole career. He was with Buffalo. Like he had that one little window with the Colts last year where he looked good. I don't know where that came from, but I don't know. Yeah. Those kind of running backs after like a few years in the NFL, they don't just magically like, okay, I'm gonna be good now and I'm gonna have a career year. Like it just doesn't happen.
So the only thing I can think of is, you take a veteran running back, you sign him for a good amount of money, and management is like, listen, this is our starter. We have Chase Brown. He's talented and everything. You work him in, but we're signing Zach Moss here and we're giving him this money, run him until the wheels fall off. And maybe that's how they started the season, because we were all dumbfounded, right? Sitting here every week for the first 4, 5, 6 weeks going, wow, Chase Brown's just a terrible draft pick. We're not getting much out of him. I know we were all dying with him. I was a high ownership on him, Nelson, all of us. Sitting there dying, Zach Moss goes down, and, it's to the point now where after these last 7 weeks, Chase Brown was one of the absolute best, if not the best pick on the draft board this year for where he went. Like that's how great and consistent he's been. Every week you're looking up 25 fantasy points, 20 to 30 fantasy points. He's one of the best draft picks in the top 100. It's crazy. Like you said, Nelson, if it just would have started a week, 2, 3 weeks sooner, I think we all would have been in a different position with a lot of our teams.
100%.
I mean, that's pretty much the last observation I have. So, Chris, I'll send it over to you.
Yeah, one more follow-up with that. I don't think, I said it about Gibbs, but, Chase Brown is right there, number 2 or 1B. The rest of this way, it's Gibbs and Chase Brown to me, in my opinion. Those are the 2 running backs that you want. I just think that those 2 are set up every week where it's going to be 20 point floors for the 2 of them. They both catch the ball out of the backfield a ton. They're both in big time offenses. They both have great matchups. I mean, it's Gibbs and Brown, and you see a lot of that up top of the standings here.
I think the dark horse is Bucky, if he's healthy with these 2.
Matty loves his Bucky. I'll tell you one thing.
You got to will it into existence sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. God, where do I start? First observation, let's just throw out a handful of these. I know we covered some of them, but the Arizona passing game the Green Bay passing game, the Houston passing game, Atlanta, the Bears, the Chiefs, Seattle. All offenses that we bought in on this preseason, all passing offenses we wanted as much as we could get of these. All of them are bust. They're all tanking. They're all garbage. It's just amazing in fantasy when you look at all these offenses of what they were. There was a point that Kirk Cousins in this Atlanta offense on a Thursday night put up, like, I think it was like 2 million yards and 80 touchdowns versus Tampa. They looked unbelievable. We were all bought in, top 5 offense. And to see where they've become and looking at that offense last night, they were hiding Kirk Cousins last night. He threw the ball. What was his completions? I think, did he complete 11 passes or 7?
11 of 17.
11 of 17. I mean, that's like.
And they were lucky to win that one.
And they were holding on for dear life. The coach was playing scared. Morris is playing scared. If he could have gave Bijan the ball another 10 times and gave him 35 carries, he would have. It's just a complete abomination. I know Drake London scored, but you gotta be worried about him. And how about my next? Darnell Mooney gets 1 target and 0 yard after the season that Darnell Mooney has had. And how many? I think I saw 33 teams had Darnell Mooney rostered in the championship round. You have to assume that most of them had him in. Darnell Mooney post a bagel, and you didn't even know he was out there. So that whole passing game is in complete shambles. You have to completely avoid it the rest of the way here. It's just wild to me, some of these offenses. Anybody got anything on that?
Yeah, Mooney got Cooper Kupped.
I think Kirk Cousins has to be hurt. There has to be something. The guy can't throw the ball. I know I saw Chad saying something on Twitter where, all they want to do is play action, and he's a rhythm quarterback, and you got to let him be a quarterback. But he doesn't seem to have any arm strength this last month. So there's got to be something there. I mean, I'm not saying he was the greatest quarterback, but he was a pretty good quarterback, and he could move offenses, and he just has no arm strength.
Yeah, he's not the same guy he was last year and the year before and the year before in Minnesota.
Yeah, and to that point, you're right. He got crushed in a game like 3 weeks ago where he landed hard on his arm and shoulder. And then there was, he missed practice during that week. He came back on like a Friday, and then they said, all right, he was good to go. But you wonder if he's dealing with some like sprain type shoulder or whatever. But if that's the case, then the coaches would know that, and you got to turn to Penix, Like, if this is what the Atlanta offense is going to produce and what you're doing with him, and you're just trying to get him through the game, and he's going to throw for 100 to 150 yards, and it's going to be all Bijan and Algier in the run game, well, then just, turn it over to Penix and let Penix throw the ball down the field.
DTR was named quarterback week 16.
There you go. Breaking news.
Yeah.
Breaking news. And there goes Winston, and there goes all the Judy love. So it was a good run, Jerry Judy owners. But we're all done now.
That's devastating.
Yep.
Yeah,
and it hurts that game. And it hurts that game too, guys. We want Winston in there throwing, 400 yards and 3 touchdowns and 3 picks and get me in a 42-38 game with Burrow. But
I think it helps Ford, maybe. He helps your boy Ford.
Yeah. Probably going to help Chase Brown, too.
Exactly.
Unless it's Khalil Herbert mop-up time.
Oh, no. Dan. Easy, Dan. No, that's funny. But speaking of Cooper Kupp's 0 last week, how about Amari Cooper and his bagel? Like that little play on words there, huh, Matt?
Yeah, there
you go.
Rondo would be proud.
There you go. A little Cooper and a little Cooper Kupp. They joined up. They were the Bagel Boys this first week of the playoffs. Last week, we talked about how we all loved Amari Cooper, going into the fantasy playoffs here, coming off of a 14-target game, okay, and looking like, all right, he's back in the good graces. He's Josh Allen's, alpha again. and he plays, I think it was less than 50% of the snaps, gets one target and gets bageled versus the Lions in a game that was the biggest shootout of the year and the most passing yards of the season. So I didn't even realize it during the game. I don't have Amari Cooper anywhere, but I didn't realize it until the game was over. But what I did realize with this Bills situation is, yes, you love James Cook going forward here. You're obviously in love with Josh Allen, but what do you do with this Bills receiver game now that Keon Coleman is back and Kincaid is back? Everybody is a mess. It's Cooper's less than 50. Even Shakir, who we all love that we're playing it, he was like around 60% snap with Keon Coleman back in there.
I think Dan made a good point earlier in the year with the Buffalo offense and how it was just, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you kind of said, Dan, just like musical chairs with these guys, and no one's really going to stand out necessarily. And that's basically what the offense is. You have a couple of guys that have been getting it done despite the fact. So Chris, I was a big James Cook guy, and Chris, you say oh, you got to feel good about Cook, but watching these games, I don't feel good about Cook.
You're right on that. Just because I think he was 41% snap rate.
Here's the thing: he's a dynamic player.
Yeah.
I still believe in the talent, so he's getting it done despite the fact that he's in a full-fledged committee with Ty Johnson and Davis. So they got Davis running in at the goal line, where earlier in the year they were keeping Cook in the game when they got near the goal line. I noticed a little more of let's bring in Ray Davis, and then James Cook. My opinion, has good hands out of the backfield, and he's so damn fast that I can't help but think man, if he got some of that third down work that Ty Johnson's getting, we're talking about James Cook probably in the same breath as the top three, 4 or 5 running backs that, for fantasy purposes, because he would be having a monster season right now. But instead it's all, Ty Johnson's getting these, big catches and, running for 85 yards or whatever. So that's the offense. They're a committee. They like mixing in all these receivers. So you saw as soon as Coleman came back, it just, they're going to use Hollins. They're going to use Shakir. All those guys were 50%.
Yeah, it's a mess. That's why I'm saying, who do you play going forward out of any of them? I have Khalil Shakir, and I'm leaning more towards not playing him this upcoming week. And it sounds crazy because he's been good and consistent, but I'm not throwing a receiver out there that's a 50, 60% snap percentage guy, especially when they bring in 2 more guys into the passing offense. I don't want to see that box score at the end of the day with everybody 3 or 4 catches for 30, 40 yards, because that's what the Bills are now going forward. It was a good run for Shakir when Coleman and Kincaid were out and the offense was suppressed and Allen was peppering him. That was all well and good, but I think those days are over. So that's the pass game. And to your point, you're right, Nelson, because what I noticed with the Bills is first quarter comes out and everybody gets a drive to start the game. Cook gets his drive. Ray Davis comes in. Ty Johnson comes in and then is a third down back. So that's a complete mess, but it's more to the point where if you had James Cook in your lineup this past week, you got the top 5 running back performance. You got the 27 points. Now you look up your 14-point favorites at home versus a shit Patriots defense. There's no way you're sitting James Cook this week. Okay, probably more carries than normal for James Cook. Then you go to championship week 17, you're probably double-digit favorites at home again versus the Jets' shit defense. So James Cook is locked in. You're not thinking twice about James Cook. Can he bust out? Absolutely he could bust out. We've seen it a handful of weeks this year. But these next 2 weeks, it's James Cook.
It is, but like you said, I mean, Ty Johnson has just taking a stranglehold on that third down back. And Ray Davis is going to get put in. And if they do start blowing teams out, I think they're going to look to kind of rest him.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're happy to start him though, like you say. You have the big spreads and all that, but
yeah.
Buffalo's
I think
putting so
we
much
got
on
lucky. I like to always, I'm proud of going through and following my process and trying to get things right. This is a situation where I played James Cook, and I feel like it was a high total. It's a bad matchup, really, on paper against Detroit. And I feel like I just got lucky because if you're really watching that game and you're seeing how they're, the timeshare, got lucky, for him to put up a top 5 game.
Yeah, I mean, it was, even watching that game, they said it was more Ty Johnson than normal because it was game script dependent. It was you're in a shootout. They had matchups that they liked Ty Johnson on the linebackers of Detroit, and it worked out perfectly. Like they said, I don't think you'll see much Ty Johnson these next 2 weeks as double-digit favorites. I don't think they'll need him in the pass game. That's why I would look for James Cook to be, a solid playoff contributor all 3 weeks. That's just my 2 cents on that. We see somebody in the chat asking about James Conner set up for good weeks as well. He had a huge game this past week, obviously. Same thing. That was Joey Brown. 100%. Come in, now you get the Carolina run defense, So James Conner is another one of those running backs. Gibbs, Chase Brown, James Conner, James Cook. These are the guys I think that I got burned bad week 1 with Saquon Barkley. Obviously, I rode Saquon Barkley all year to all my playoff teams here. He bust out. Derrick Henry bust out, ironically, in the same week. I thought that was the story of week 14 is how, it was a running back season in fantasy. And then as soon as we got to the first week of the playoffs, the wide receivers took center stage and were the stars of week 15, I'm sorry, in the fantasy playoffs here. Receivers went off. The stud running backs that carried us, a lot of teams, to high up in the overall, all fell back with Henry and Barkley busting out. Not only those two, but Chuba Hubbard was in an unbelievable position. I loved him going into last week. He busted out with 8 points. Tony Pollard, who I knew we all loved, he was in a great position. He scores on the opening drive, then doesn't do anything the rest of the game. We see Tajay Spears now in the mix. So,
and the other guy, Chris, he had a solid game. So I'm not complaining about it, but he's hurt. I expect him to miss time is Kamara. So he's another guy that carried teams. He had been so good. And he put up 17. He didn't hurt you.
That's the thing. Yeah, that's why I left him out of that group right there, because he gave you 17 points. You got through the week.
That was a hell of a catch.
You're screwed. You're probably screwed now these next 2 weeks riding Kamara into the fantasy playoffs, but at least you got the 17.5 points, and now you could replace him. But yeah, Nelson.
All right, Nelson.
We covered all my observations, to be honest. I jumped in and interjected with you guys on your points, that I felt passionate about. So I don't know. I don't have much more to add.
The one last thing on observations I'd like to say is, because we didn't mention it, Jonathan Taylor, how that play basically probably cost some people, fantasy wins, but he also basically ended the Colts season on that play, because you're going up 20-7, changes how the Broncos got to play the rest of that game, and it's a 13-7 game and you lose 31-13. That was...
You always hear people say, oh, that play cost them the game. Well, no, this play actually cost them the game. He actually cost his team the game and the play and a chance at the playoffs. One play changed the Colts season right there. And game. It was unbelievable. I can't believe that he did that. I still can't believe people still do that.
Corley did it for the Jets. I mean,
Countless
you see
people.
one player do it in the league, and every coach has got to be going, whatever you do, hang on to the ball all the way across the goal line.
Wasn't Deshaun the first to do it on Monday night against Cowboys?
Sean Jackson, yeah.
Yeah, he was
Jackson
first.
back in the day. He dropped the ball at the 4-yard line, though, Matt. I remember that play. He literally dropped it at the 4. I think he thought the 5-yard line was the end zone, but it's idiotic. I tweeted about it during the day when Taylor did it. It's every other week. I feel like someone else is doing it, and is it so hard when you're all alone going into the end zone? Just hold the ball till you get halfway through the end zone, and then you want to look cool. What are you doing?
Twice.
Huh?
It happened twice on Sunday.
The Cincinnati defense.
The defender for Cincinnati.
That's where I was leading into, Nelson.
He was kind of trying to shift the ball, and he lost control of it. But why he was trying to shift the ball there, I don't understand.
Yes.
He was probably trying to get ready for a celebration or something. I don't know. But
they're just so dumb just doing that. It's just so stupid.
But you would think it would be I don't know, head coaches would just embed that in their brain, or there'd be a huge fine if you. I mean, I know you really can't fine guys anymore. That it matters with the contracts, but
think about how sick you are if you have the Bengals defense, and I saw a couple people up top actually have the Bengals defense in the overall. You were on your way to a 26, 27 point day, and you dropped the ball on the 1-inch line with the bang. That would have been the second defensive touchdown of the day. You pray for days like that from your fantasy defense. Gut wrenching.
No doubt. All right, guys, let's hit a couple other questions real quick, and we'll get out of here. But a Week 16 starter, somebody who probably won't be heavily started that you think actually should be. Matt, who you got?
Kendre Miller, the prophecy will be fulfilled now. If he does get the start, though, I do like him the last couple of weeks, but that's just
Yep.
The guy for me, and again, it's not confidently. I just think this game is setting up for him. It's the third week. It's Pacheco. Nobody's going to really start him, but I think he has a chance to score multiple touchdowns. And, the Texans have been probably the biggest disappointment for me this year, especially Stroud. Stroud is definitely up there. I thought that kid was going to be a star, and he's reverted really bad.
I'm going to give you all the props, Matt, because I don't see it with Pacheco. So if it happens next week, I'm going to give it to you. You nailed that call, because now
we'll see. I mean, it's
I have a couple of Pacheco teams consolation bracket or whatever, but I don't. I was going through lineups. I'm like, I have no interest in putting him in the lineup. I'm not.
No, I hear you, but the question is, who probably won't be heavily started that should be, and I could see it. I can see the scenario play out where he has that game. It's a tailor-made game for him, and if he's reaching that 100% status, now they feel comfortable, and if he gets in a rhythm. That's the story I'm telling myself.
Yep.
Okay.
There you go. I like the call. It's gutsy. I'm not sure that I'm not sure it'll come out, but it's a gutsy call, and I like the fact that it's gutsy.
Yeah.
I'm gonna throw mine out there because the last 2 weeks that we played this game, Nelson took mine. So before he takes mine again,
go first.
I think I could hit his. Maybe I'll hit it. My guy that should be started that most people won't. Jalen McMillan. For Tampa Bay. He's now emerged as the number 2 guy in the passing offense. He's taken over that role that Cade Otton was put in with the consistent numbers. Cade Otton's faded away this past month. McMillan, you see this a lot with rookies every year. Second half of the season, they come on strong. Tampa's a big time. Their offense is clicking. The attention's on Evans. Evans will probably see even more attention now this week. Jalen McMillan could keep turning out these 15-plus point fantasy games. So Jalen McMillan, if you have him on your bench all this time, I'd seriously consider flexing him this week.
Can I get a participation ribbon for drafting about 70% of McMillan and holding him half the year?
Yeah, I'll give you I'll give you my ribbon that I had him, and I'm only sick because I dropped him in most of mine too.
Yeah.
I mean, you had to drop. I mean, I don't know. I drafted him
of course.
too and dropped him. It was just one of those things where
I had this thing for, I don't know, 2 weeks straight in my high stakes drafts where round 16 and 17 with Jalen McMillan, Tyrone Tracy, automatic. Like that's just McMillan Tracy. If you go through all my teams this year, it's McMillan Tracy. Like it must be 75% ownership on both of them. And, whatever. Had to drop McMillan. Tracy worked out a little bit too, but that's that.
All right, Nelson, who you got?
I like the Miller call by Matt. So that was one of mine. I'm gonna paint a story for myself and say that Tony Pollard's been dealing with injuries now for the last few weeks. They've been limiting him in practice. He's not practicing during the week, and then they get him up for the game. He re-injured himself or hurt an ankle, a new injury. Okay. I think Tennessee shuts him down at least for the next 1 to 2 weeks. And I think Tyjae Spears is going to be a difference maker.
I benched Spears in a couple of teams because they said Pollard's going to play now. And
how could you not? No, nobody could have started Spears this past
I know,
week the way
but
Pollard
it was maybe you had that RB2 that you needed the stuff in there.
Yeah, and I believe, to Nelson's point, I believe Pollard hit the 1,000-yard. I think he hit his 1,000 yards this past weekend late. So I think they were just trying to get him there with this ankle issue that he hasn't been practicing on. And I could totally see what Nelson's saying here. I wouldn't be shocked if Pollard sits out these last couple weeks and Spears is RB1 these last 2 weeks.
Let's just hope that they actually make him inactive so that we know what's going on instead of making him active, and then Spears gets all the work and everybody hates it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Chris, you did manage to steal mine, but I had a backup plan.
There you go.
I'll throw Jaden Reed out there. I mean, I know, Green Bay passing game.
Whoa.
Chris already talked about the Green Bay passing game. It's tough.
Whoa.
We've struggled to trust him, but he had great usage versus Seattle. I think the Packers would be smart to pull out the passing game out of mothballs and get it running up to speed before the playoffs. We saw the Eagles do that last week. I think the Packers need to do the same thing. I think they need to use a Saints game to kind of get their passing game in order. And I think if they do that, Jaden Reed's probably a big beneficiary. Is that ballsy?
Just like Nelson said to Matt, I don't see it. I wish you well with that. I would be avoiding the Green Bay passing game like the plague right now. It's like the Bills passing offense, honestly, to me. There's just too many mouths to feed. They all get fed a little bit. You don't know who's going to be the guy each week. And not to the Bills' point, but they're a run-heavy offense now. So whoever's getting fed in the pass game is fighting for scraps once they go away from the run. And you're a 14-point favorite at home versus the Saints, so I don't know how much love is going to pass for. So I don't know, Dan.
I think it behooves them to get that passing game going because they're going to need it in the playoffs. They're not going to be able to run Josh Jacobs down everybody's throat.
You're a braver man than me. You're definitely. I just want to. I know.
I just want to point out, Chris, you took my guy. So
yes, 100%. I understand.
I mean, I'm trying to go with, like, if Pollard's out, I think Spears is like an obvious guy. You guys are coming out with Pacheco and Jaden Reed.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I wanted to say Kendrick Miller, but I don't know if he's going to be the guy if Kamara plays.
Oh, I think Miller is more of a sure thing. I don't.
Oh yeah.
Groin abductor injury, no bueno for running backs.
Yep.
Yeah. I think I could be totally wrong, but
I think he's totally done. And there's no point in playing him.
Yeah.
I feel like almost 100% sure that Kamara is missing this week.
I agree with that.
I mean, he should. But
my other guy besides McMillan was the guy we talked about earlier. It's Jerome Ford. I was high on Jerome Ford, very high. He was on a lot of my teams. It busted out. It was a bad pick. But here we are, these final 2 weeks. I think he's in a position versus Cincinnati and Miami. He looked good this past week. Should have the whole backfield mostly to himself and a run-heavy approach. Jerome Ford, I think, is someone you could definitely get in your lineup this week as your RB2 off of your bench and in there. And lastly, Sam Laporta is going to be what Brock Bowers we all thought were. If you got Sam Laporta in your playoff overall contest, Sam Laporta is going to make a run here as the top fantasy tight end. Why are we all laughing, guys? I'm just rattling names off.
No, because it's ironic.
It is ironic, right? It really is. Think about that.
It's amazing. Like, Laporta does absolute shit all year long. Bowers is a monster. And now you have the dynamic with Ritter at quarterback, which, I mean, watching that game last night, it was painful because that dude drops back. He looks for like a split second downfield, check it down to Abdullah. It was amazing. Like, there's no shot of him throwing it past 10 yards.
It's amazing he's still getting to cash NFL paychecks.
My oldest son, he's home from college, and we were watching the games last night. And he had in his local league, he has Brock Bowers, right? And he's got to make up 8 points. And so, like, in the second half, he's like, dude, right? Like, it's going to happen, right? And I'm like, it's set up perfectly, but I'm like, dude, Ritter sucks. And he was losing his mind watching. He's like the one pass play where he kept checking it down, and then, like, it was right at, like, there was like a minute left in the game, and Bowers releases and, like, is open, like, on a crossing route, and Ritter decides to, like, throw it to, like, Jacoby, like, 25 yards downfield. He caught it, right? Like, bang, bang play. He's like, now you decide not to check it. He's losing his mind. That was my only entertainment.
Tell him welcome to the fantasy world of disappointment and anger. Yeah, disappointment, anger, and frustration. But it is crazy how Bowers was the man every week, all year long. Stud tight end one. Laporta was the biggest disappointment at the tight end position, and now there isn't anybody for these next 2 weeks that would take Bowers over Laporta, and it happened that quick.
Yeah. Well, if AOC quarterbacks, if he can make it this weekend, then
all right, I'll give you that caveat. I'll give you that caveat.
Jacksonville.
I don't know if he's all right. Good point.
I don't know if he's good, and the Raiders shouldn't start him. They should start
this is all, the last 2 weeks. If Ritter starts, this all is a caveat.
Can we play the Bradley kid, the one they showed every once in a while on the sideline? I don't even know who that freaking kid is, but
it don't matter. That quarterback? It doesn't matter who he is either. Just get him in. Get anybody but Ritter.
I'm like, Bradley. Who's Bradley? I'm like, I'm supposed to know all these quarterbacks. I don't even know who Bradley is.
Good one. All right. One last quick question. Week 16. What's the big game you're looking forward to this week for whatever reason? So, I want to know what game you want to see and why. Chris.
What game I want to see is I think it has the sneaky potential to be very high scoring again, and it's the Rams and Jets. I'll go with that. I just think. I think it's just set up both ways perfectly. You know, Rodgers, Adams, and Wilson versus that Rams secondary. They started, clicking this past week. Same thing right back at it. The Jets defense is a mess, and Stafford with Puka. I think Puka hangs a 30 this week, and if Kupp has to get a little, payback for his 0, so I'm sure Stafford will find him in the end zone a couple times too. That game I think could be 35-31.
You've done it again, Chris. Taking my team.
Sorry, Dan.
No
Great
problem.
minds think alike, Dan.
There you go. Nelson, what do you got?
Eagles Commanders. I think that game's going to go over 50.
Ooh.
Hope you're
Surprisingly enough, I was shocked. That total's 44. 45. I think it was 44 or 45.
I would take the over.
Yeah, I was surprised to see that. I was expecting like a 52.
So you think the Commanders can score with them?
I do.
All right.
Yeah.
They've had it. One thing, Washington has had success with Philly, at least the last couple of years. I know earlier in the season, not so much, but they played them tough, even when they were terrible with Ron Rivera. So they're home, and hopefully, what's his name's healthy. So I like that one, Nelson. It was either that one for me or the Thursday night football game. I think it's just an interesting game. You got two teams on the upswing, and the Chargers just got their teeth kicked in, so they really need to win this one. So I'll be looking for that one.
That's a good one. All right, I'll wrap this up. I think Steelers Ravens is going to be huge for Lamar owners, of which I am one. Lamar was quarterback 19 earlier this year against Pittsburgh. He only played him once last year. He was quarterback 23 that week. Didn't play him in 2022. I mean, this is it's a tough matchup for Lamar. So I'm interested to see how he comes out of this. I mean, it just didn't look good earlier this year. And
it was a tough matchup for Hurts. So
yeah.
I mean, my team that's got in contention is a Lamar team. So I've become
is it?
Oh,
really?
I've become a Jackson fan.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
let me ask
Nelson,
you this.
you're
I have a team that's got Lamar and Jaden Daniels. Is there any way you're playing Jaden Daniels versus Philadelphia over Lamar?
I'm not even looking at matchups. I'm playing Lamar. I'm never sitting Lamar.
That's where I'm at. I figured I'd throw that question out there just because
Definitely a good question to throw out, but I agree. You just have to roll.
Yeah.
That game is very interesting, Dan. I think there's two things that are major for that game. Number one, you want to see George Pickens back healthy practicing in the next couple days and get in that game for a potential of Pittsburgh to hopefully move the ball, keep up, and make this game a back-and-forth shootout. Without Pickens, I don't know if that's the game plan. I think it's try and run heavy and slow the game down, keep Lamar off the field. If Pickens is out there, maybe the dynamic changes a little bit. On top of that, if you're a Lamar owner, you're praying that Watt takes the week off with this ankle injury, and maybe it's a multi-week injury. That slows the pass rush down here for Pittsburgh. You're already seeing people throw all over Pittsburgh the last bunch of weeks. So it can be done. But those two dynamics right there, Pickens playing, Watts sitting, turns this game hopefully into a back-and-forth, higher-scoring game. I'm a Lamar owner with you guys. I'm hoping that that's what we see.
I don't see it happening, but if Pittsburgh was to win this game, they lock the division, right? Because they'd be 2 games up on them with 2 to play, and they beat them twice.
Yeah. Yep.
It's a revenge game. And it's a revenge game for Lamar.
Yep. Should be a good one.
Hope so.
All right, guys, we're a little over an hour and a half, so we'll get everybody out of here. Just want to mention, if you haven't yet tried out the Fast Draft, you need to sign up, check it out. Flex 6 Frenzy, that's where it's at. It's a weekly game, super easy to play. Just get to the App Store, download Fast Draft, set up your account. You don't even have to do the drafts. You can just set up your own personal rankings. Let the system draft for you. Just tell it how many drafts you want to enter, and it'll do it for you. And then you can customize it by assigning multipliers to each player. Like you've got a 2x, a 1.5x, all of that kind of stuff, and you can assign those to different players. So we got a special promo code that called Empire. So Empire, doesn't matter if you capitalize it or not. We'll match your deposit 100% up to 25% or up to $25. So get out there, give it a try. It's almost free. And thanks everybody for tuning in. Check us out next week. We're not sure exactly when we're going to go next week, but we know we are going to have a show sometime. Might be Monday, might be after the Christmas holiday. We don't know, but we'll let you know when we know that. So make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the Player Profiler channel. If you're listening to the podcast, make sure you're giving the show a like there as well. And good luck to everybody as the fantasy season hits its penultimate week.
Hey, I want to thank you for being part of this broadcast. If you have any thoughts on it, leave a comment. If you enjoyed it, make sure you leave a like. And if you want to see more shows on the Player Profiler channel, subscribe to it. That's how we know you want more.